The sky over Velmara was soft purple. Birds with glassy wings flew above silver trees. The sun here was blue and low, casting long shadows across the shining garden paths. In the middle of this alien world, something unusual appeared. A bright flash tore through the air, and a strange figure fell from the sky. He landed hard on the ground. Near the center of the royal garden, the figure was a young human named Tom. He had short brown hair and wore a faded Earth uniform. His eyes opened slowly as he sat up. He was confused and dizzy. All around him were flowers he had never seen before. They glowed slightly and moved with the wind like they were alive. People gathered. Velmarans were tall and graceful with soft, violet skin and shining silver eyes. Their clothes were made of smooth, glowing fabrics that changed color with their movements. They whispered among themselves, staring at the human. Some looked surprised. Others looked amused. From a short distance, two royal sisters watched. Princess Mira and Princess Lyra were daughters of King Raylan. They were famous across Velmara for their beauty and pride. Mira wore a long dress shaped like falling water. Lyra wore a crown of small floating stars. Both of them looked at Tom and laughed quietly. "What a small creature," said Mira, her voice smooth. "Look how lost he is," said Lyra. "He doesn't even understand where he is." Tom tried to stand. His leg hurt, but he managed. He raised a hand and said in English, "I come in peace. My name is Tom." The crowd didn't understand him. Some chuckled. One child copied his voice for fun. Mira and Lyra smiled at each other, but the guards did not laugh. They stepped forward, weapons in hand. Before they could do anything, a tall man in a white robe came forward. He was the royal translator, a peaceful elder named Velen. He raised his hand to stop the guards. "Let the creature speak," he said kindly. "He may be lost, not dangerous." Tom repeated himself slowly. Velen used a small device to translate. When the words came through the speaker in their language, the people went silent. "I am Tom. I mean no harm. I'm from Earth." "Now there were murmurs. Earth was only a small name in the galaxy, barely known to most Velmarans. Humans were like stories told to children. They had never seen one. The royal sisters stepped forward. "You are far from your home," said Mira. "Did you fall out of the sky by mistake?" Tom nodded. He tried to explain. His ship had a system error. He was part of a trade program. But something went wrong during travel. The machine exploded, and he woke up here. Lyra tilted her head. "So your kind still makes mistakes like that?" Tom gave a small smile. "Yes, we learn by failing. I guess I'm still learning some." Nobles in the crowd laughed again, but softer this time. King Raylan arrived then, carried on a smooth floating chair. He was old but strong in his eyes. He looked at Tom for a long moment. "A human. Rare indeed." He said, "And you landed in my garden. That makes you my guest." Tom bowed respectfully. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The king asked his council what to do. Many said to send Tom away. Others said to keep him in the palace to study. But one old woman, a science advisor, said something that changed everything. "If he wants to stay, let him prove his value. Let him take the trials of harmony. If he passes, he may remain as a friend of Velmara." The king agreed. Tom would stay under watch. If he passed the 3 ancient trials, he would earn a place in the kingdom. The royal sisters smiled again, this time with amusement. "He will fail the first trial." Mira whispered, "He can't even walk straight." Lyra added, "But Tom only." Listen quietly. He knew they laughed. He knew he was weaker here. But deep inside, he also knew something they did not. Humans did not give up easily. They adapted. They grew. Later that night, Tom sat in a quiet room of the palace. The window showed stars he had never seen. His leg was bandaged. He held a small translator in his hand and began to practice their words, one by one, carefully. A servant brought him food, strange but warm. "Thank you," Tom said in the local language. Slowly but clearly, the servant smiled, surprised. Far across the palace, Mira looked out from her tower window. Lyra brushed her hair beside her. "He won't last," said Mira. "No," said Lyra. "But he is interesting outside." The wind moved through the trees. The garden glowed under the alien moon. Tom lay back and stared at the stars. He had no idea what tomorrow's trial would be, but he was ready. He had fallen into a strange world, and now it was watching him, laughing at him, testing him. He would not run. The next morning, the palace was busy. Music played from floating instruments, and the sky was bright with soft blue light. People gathered in the royal square. Today was the beginning of the trials of harmony, and everyone was curious to see how the human would perform. Tom stood in the middle of the large platform. His clothes were plain, given to him by the palace workers. His leg was healing, but he still moved with a slight limp. Round him stood royal judges, guards, and curious citizens. In the front row sat King Raylan, with Princess Mira and Princess Lyra beside him. The first trial was called the test of balance. It was not about strength. It was about the ability to keep peace in a difficult moment. A table was brought forward, filled with many small objects, cups, stones, feathers, and metal blocks. A judge stepped forward and spoke loudly. In this trial, you must create a tower using every object. It must stand on its own. If it falls, you fail. You may not ask for help. You may not refuse any item. Tom looked at the table. The objects were all different sizes and weights. Some were round, some were flat. Many were shaped to roll or slide. The crowd whispered. Even Velmarins found this trial difficult. Mira leaned toward her sister. He does not even understand our materials. Lyra smiled. This will not take long, but Tom did not rush. He studied each object carefully. He touched the stone, tapped the wood, and felt the surface of the metal. Then he began to build. He started with the heaviest items on the bottom. The stone blocks formed the base. Slowly, he placed the wood pieces next. He used the feathers, not for height, but to stop things from sliding. He pressed them into small spaces, like soft supports. As he worked, the crowd grew quiet. The tower was not tall, but it was steady. Tom's hands moved with care. His eyes stayed calm. He did not smile. He did not panic. When he placed the final object, a small silver ball on the very top, the tower stayed still. The wind blew gently, but it did not fall. The judge stepped forward and looked closely. He tapped the table. The tower wobbled but held strong. The judge raised his hand. The tower stands. The first trial is complete. There was silence. Then the crowd clapped. Some stood. Others nodded. King Raylan smiled slightly. Mira and Lyra stared at the tower. They could not understand how someone so new to their world had passed so easily. He must have studied this before. Mira said softly. Lyra shook her head. Or maybe he just learns quickly after the trial. Tom was taken back to his room. He was tired but calm. A servant brought him fruit and tea. You surprised many today, the servant said kindly. Tom smiled. I only used what I knew. Heavy things below, light things on top. Same on earth. The servant laughed gently. Simple, but smart. Later that evening, the king called for a short meeting. He sat in a small hall with his daughters, the judge, and a few council members. I saw patience in him, said the judge. He did not rush. He did not copy. He made something balanced in his own way. Mira folded her arms. It was a small task. He got lucky. Lyra looked thoughtful. He acted with care. That is not luck. King Raylan said nothing for a moment. Then he spoke. One trial is not enough to judge him, but it shows he is not a fool. We will continue the tests. Let the people see who he truly is. The next morning, word of Tom's success spread across the city. Children played in the streets, pretending to build towers. Artists painted his moment of victory. Some people were still unsure about him, but many began to feel curious instead of cold. Tom, unaware of all the talk, spent the day walking the palace garden with a translator. He asked about Velmarin plants, animals, and customs. He took notes. In a small book, later in the day, he saw Mira sitting under a glowing tree. She was reading a long scroll. Tom bowed slightly. May I sit here? She looked up for a moment. She seemed like she would say no, but then she moved her scroll and nodded. Tom sat quietly. The translator floated between them. Your trial went well, Mira said, But the next one is harder, I'm sure it is, Tom said with a small smile. But I'm not here to win. I'm here to learn. Mira raised an eyebrow. Most people do not enjoy being tested. I've spent my life being tested, he said. This is just a new kind for a moment. Mira said nothing. Then she looked back at her scroll. You are strange, she said softly, but not boring that night. Tom looked out his window again. The stars above Velmara were still new to him, but they didn't feel cold anymore. They felt like they were watching. He thought of Earth, of his old friends, of the accident that brought him here. He missed home, but something inside him was changing. He was no longer just surviving. He was growing, and the next trial was coming. 2 days after the first trial, the palace was quiet but full of thoughts. The people of Velmara were still talking about Tom. The human had done something unexpected. He had passed the first test not with strength, but with patience and balance. Some nobles called it luck, others called it skill. But the people still did not believe in him. Princess Mira and Princess Lyra watched Tom from the royal balcony as he walked with the translator. In the garden, his steps were slow, but steady. He stopped often to look at flowers or birds, asking questions. Writing notes. He is to calm, said Mira. Like he thinks this place belongs to him. Lyra crossed her arms. Let's remind him that he is still a guest, not an equal. Mira smiled. Then let's give him a challenge. Not from the king, not from the council. A royal challenge from us that evening, during the palace dinner. Mira stood and made a formal announcement. Her voice rang across the golden hall. I wish to invite our guest, the human Tom, to a performance night, a test of mind, voice, and story. It will be a cultural duel. He must dance, play music, and tell a tale before the court. This will show us how deep his understanding of Velmaran spirit truly is. The nobles gasped quietly. Some looked excited, others looked confused. The challenge was rare. Even Velmaran citizens feared such a test. Tom looked up from his seat. He nodded slowly. I accept, he said, but I will need help to learn your ways. The king allowed it. He raised a hand. Let it be done. The challenge will take place. In 3 days. For the next 3 days, Tom trained with an old palace librarian named Salo. Salo was once a teacher of history, music, and dance. Now he lived a quiet life with books and soft songs. When Tom asked for help, Salo smiled kindly. You are brave to try this, said Salo. But bravery alone is not enough. You must understand the soul of Velmara. Tom listened carefully. Salo taught him the flow of Velmaran music, how to move with the rhythm, how to hold the special stringed instrument called the vinyl, and how to sing without pushing the voice. Tom practiced day and night. He made mistakes, but never gave up. On the 3rd night, the court gathered again. This time, the large room was filled with music lights and cushions. The royal performance hall was round, with open sky above. Stars blinked softly as the people waited for the show. Mira stepped forward first. She wore a long silver robe and floated into the center of the hall. She danced with grace, her arms moving like water. She played a glowing harp, her fingers light and quick. Her story was about the moon's song, a tale of peace and beauty. The crowd clapped. Her performance was perfect. Then came Lyra. Her voice was soft but clear as glass. She sang a song about the sea winds and the spirit birds. Her movements were slow, full of feeling. When she finished, the crowd clapped louder. Now it was Tom's turn. He stepped into the center. He wore simple white clothing. In his hand was the vinyl. He bowed to the royal family, then to the people. He sat on a small stone bench and placed the vinyl on his knee. At first, he played only one note, then another, then a soft rhythm began. The sound was not perfect, but it was steady and warm. Then he began his story. He did not sing a Velmaran tale. Instead, he told a story from Earth. It was about a farmer who planted seeds during war. While others fought, he grew food for both sides. When peace finally came, people remembered him, not the soldiers. Tom's voice was simple. His hands moved with the music. His words were clear. The translator helped, but many people listened without it. His story was short, honest. When he finished, He placed the vinyl on the ground and looked up. The court was quiet. Then someone clapped. Then another. Then many. The applause grew. Not wild, but steady and full of respect. Mira looked surprised. Lyra looked thoughtful. King Raylan nodded with pride. You did not show great skill, but you showed great heart. That is the spirit of harmony. Tom bowed again. Thank you. I only wanted to share something real from my world after the performance. Tom walked alone in the garden. The stars were clear, and the air was cool. He felt tired but happy. Then he heard footsteps. Mira and Lyra walked toward him. Mira spoke first. I did not expect you to understand our ways so fast. Tom smiled. I did not try to copy. I only tried to respect them. Lyra nodded slowly. Your story was different, but it felt true. Tom looked at them. Thank you for the challenge. I learned much from it. The sisters looked at each other. For the first time, they did not see him as someone below them. He was still strange, still different. But he was no longer just a guest. He was becoming something more. And the trials were not over yet. The moon over Velmara was full and bright. Its gentle light touched the palace towers and silver trees. After the performance night, everything felt different. People no longer whispered behind Tom's back. They now greeted him with respect. Children waved at him when he passed. Servants smiled without fear. Tom noticed the change, but he remained quiet. He continued to learn the Velmaran language every morning. He visited the palace library each afternoon. He helped the workers in the garden when he had time. He was not trying to impress anyone. He only wanted to understand the world that had accepted him, even if only for a short while. One morning, as Tom studied near the water garden, a royal messenger arrived. The tall man bowed and spoke kindly. His Majesty invites you to join him for the evening meal. He wishes to speak with you alone. Tom stood quickly. Tell him I am honored. I will come that evening. Tom wore fresh robes made of soft gray cloth. A palace servant helped him tie the sash in the Velmaran way. The colors were simple, but the robe felt smooth and warm. He followed the guards to a quiet room with glowing walls and a long table made of crystal wood. King Raylan sat at the head of the table. There were no other nobles, no advisors, only the seats. Tom bowed deeply. Thank you for inviting me, Your Majesty. The king nodded. Sit. Let us speak as guests, not ruler and visitor. Tom sat carefully. Food was brought in silver dishes. Strange fruits, steamed roots, and soft flatbread were placed between them. The air smelled sweet. For a while, they ate without speaking. Then the king looked at Tom with calm eyes. You are not like the humans I have read about. Tom looked up. I do not know what stories you have heard, but Earth is full of many kinds of people. I am only one. The king nodded slowly. Most outsiders who visit this world try to show power. You have shown patience. Most want to take. You tried to give. Tom smiled. Maybe that is because I had nothing to offer at first. So I listened instead. King Raylan placed his hands together. You have passed 2 trials already. The 3rd is still ahead. But I am not interested only in tests. I want to know what you hope to find here. Tom thought for a moment. I did not plan to come here. It was an accident. But now that I'm here, I hope to find peace. A place where I can be useful. A place where I can belong. The king leaned back in his chair. That is not a small wish. No, Tom agreed. But I believe it is the most important one. They spoke for a long time. The king asked about Earth. Tom told him about forests, oceans, and cities. He spoke of art, music, and old mistakes. He did not hide the truth. He shared the good and the bad. King Raylan listened with care. He asked thoughtful questions. He seemed most interested in Earth's idea of cooperation between different nations. We are many tribes here. The king said, but even we struggle to stay united. Tom nodded. That is true for us as well. But I believe we are stronger when we build together. Before the night ended, the king stood and placed a hand on Tom's shoulder. You are no longer just a visitor here. You are now a student of Velmara. Finish your final trial. After that, we will speak again about your place in this world. Tom bowed again. Thank you, Your Majesty. As Tom walked back to his room, he passed Mira and Lyra in the garden path. They were both dressed in dark blue robes, watching the stars. You were with our father for a long time, Mira said. Tom stopped. Yes. He wanted to know about Earth. Lyra stepped forward. And what did he tell you? That I am now a student of Velmara, Tom replied. And that I must complete the final trial. Mira smiled slightly. He does not give such titles easily. You must have impressed him. I only told him the truth, Tom said, and listened to his words. Lyra looked at him closely. Do you ever speak to win, or only to understand? Tom thought for a moment. I speak to connect. That is enough for me. The sisters exchanged glances. Something in their hearts was changing. They had tested Tom for pride. He showed humility. They had tested him for skill. He gave sincerity. Now they began to see something more. Later that night, Tom stood at his window again. The stars above Velmara looked closer than before. The air felt softer. He no longer felt like a stranger. He had been invited by the king himself. The people were warming to him. Even the royal sisters no longer laughed the same way. But he knew the journey was not finished. The final trial remained, and it would not test his hands or his voice. It would test his heart. The final trial was near. The palace was preparing for it with quiet care. Unlike the first two trials, this one had no public stage, no music, and no crowd. It was called the Trial of Truth. The people of Velmara believed truth was the heart of harmony. To pass this trial, one must face a moment of challenge that showed who they truly were inside. No one told Tom what the trial would be. That was the way of the test. It could happen at any moment, in any form. Tom did not worry. He continued his daily routine. He studied, helped others, and walked through the gardens. He still spoke politely to everyone and greeted the guards with kindness. The people liked his calm and gentle nature. Some began calling him friend of peace. But not everyone was happy about his presence. One noble family, House Diran, did not trust outsiders. Lord Varak, a young noble from that family, believed Tom was a threat to their place in the court. He was proud, ambitious, and wanted his family to grow in power. He believed Tom was gaining too much attention. So Varak made a plan. One evening, a loud bell rang through the palace halls. It was the signal for a royal inquiry. Something serious had happened. Guards moved quickly. Servants stopped working. Everyone waited to hear the news. In the main court, a message was read aloud. A letter had been found. It was written in Velmaran language but signed with Tom's name. The message said he was here to spy on Velmara for another world and planned to steal royal knowledge. Gasps filled the room. Nobles looked at each other with shock. Some whispered. Others shook their heads. Tom was brought before the royal council. He stood alone in the circle while the nobles and advisors sat around him. Mira and Lyra sat beside the king, their faces still. King Raylan looked directly at Tom. You know what has been found. Do you deny writing this message? Tom looked at the letter. He held it in his hands. The words were smooth, but the style was not his. The shape of the letters was different. The meaning was cold, not thoughtful. I did not write this, Tom said. It is false. The king nodded. Then you must explain. Where were you when this was placed in the council room? Tom thought for a moment. I was in the garden, speaking with a young student. Her name is Ellen. The guards were sent to find Ellen. She was brought forward. She was nervous but honest. She confirmed Tom had been with her the whole time. Still, some nobles were not convinced. Lord Varak stood and spoke loudly. Words can be taught, lies can be hidden. He is clever. That makes him dangerous. Others nodded slowly. The court was divided then. Mira stood. I also had doubts before, she said. But he has never shown anything false in his actions. He never tries to gain favor. He only listens and learns. Lyra followed. And he has helped many of our workers. He shares knowledge without asking for reward. If he is a spy, he is a very kind one. The king looked at Tom again. You have only one chance to speak your truth. No help. No translator. Use our language. Speak from your heart. Tom nodded. He took a breath and stepped forward. He spoke slowly. In the Velmaran tongue, I am not a perfect man. I come from a world that has made many mistakes. But I do not hide. I do not pretend. I came here by accident, and I chose to stay because I saw beauty in your people." He paused. "I do not want power. I do not want titles. I want to learn from you, and if I can, share something good from Earth in return. That is all." The court was quiet. The king watched him closely. Then he gave a small signal. A palace scholar stepped forward. She held a glowing lens that could scan writing patterns. She placed it over the message. A soft hum filled the room. Then the lens showed a name. It was not Tom's. It was Varek's. The room filled with shock. "King." Raylan stood. "Lord Varek, you have broken the harmony of this court. You have turned a test into a trap." Varek tried to speak, but the guards moved quickly. He was taken away without another word. The king looked at Tom again. "This was your final trial. Not planned by us, but real. You faced false blame with truth. You stayed calm. You protected your name with words, not force. That is true harmony." Tom bowed deeply. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Mira and Lyra looked at him with new eyes. He had passed the hardest trial of all. He had faced lies, fear, and public judgment, and he had stayed strong without anger. That night, the sky above Velmara was clear. Tom stood in the garden, looking up. He felt tired but peaceful. He knew he had proven himself, not by power, but by truth. The stars were quiet, and the people of Velmara would never see humans the same way again. The palace of Velmara was calm after the final trial. For many days, no judgment, no test, and no celebration were held. People walked slowly, speaking softly, as if waiting for something important to happen. The air felt different, like a quiet pause before change. Tom spent his time in the library and gardens. The nobles no longer avoided him. Some even asked him questions about Earth. Palace workers spoke to him with respect. Some children followed him as he walked, hoping to hear a new story. He was no longer a stranger. He was now part of the palace life. One morning, Tom was called to a private chamber by a royal guard. The chamber was quiet, filled with soft lights and sweet scents. Inside sat King Raylan, looking peaceful and serious. "Tom," the king said, "you have faced our ways and passed our trials. You have shown not only skill, but heart." Tom bowed his head. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I am still learning." The king smiled. "That is why you are ready for more." Tom looked up, confused. "More?" "Yes," said the king. "It is time for a choice. Not only for me, but for my daughters and from you." Tom waited as the king continued. "Mira and Lyra have watched you from the beginning. At first, they laughed. Then, they tested. Now, they understand. They have spoken with me in private, and I have listened." Tom said nothing. His heart was beating faster, but he kept calm. The king stood up. "In our culture, marriage is not only a bond of love, it is also a bond of growth, of trust, of balance. You have shown harmony with both of my daughters. They are different, but you have earned respect from each of them." He turned and looked Tom in the eyes. "I offer you a place beside them, as a husband, as a royal partner, if they agree, and if you agree." Tom froze. He had not expected this. His mind filled with thoughts. He had come to this world by accident. He had started with nothing. And now, the king was offering him something beyond belief. "But Your Majesty," Tom said carefully, "I am still a visitor. I don't have a name here. I don't even know what I can give." The king nodded. "You have already given us something rare. You gave us patience when others rushed. You gave us truth when others lied. You gave us peace when others wanted power. That is more than enough." Tom took a deep breath. "And the princesses, do they truly agree?" The king smiled. "Ask them yourself." That evening, Tom was invited to the royal garden. Mira and Lyra were waiting under the glowing moon trees. They wore simple robes, with no jewels or crowns. They looked not as princesses, but as to people with open hearts. Tom walked toward them, slowly and respectfully. He stopped a few steps away. Mira was the first to speak. "You surprised us, not just once, but again and again." Lyra nodded. "We thought you were weak, but you showed a different kind of strength." Tom looked at them with honest eyes. I never wanted to impress you. I only wanted to understand. Mira stepped closer. We challenged you because we were proud. But now we see that true pride should not push others down. Lyra smiled softly. And true harmony is not control. It is connection. Tom looked at both of them. Do you truly wish for this bond? With someone from another world? Mira and Lyra looked at each other. Then they answered together. Yes. The garden lights brightened. A soft wind passed through the leaves. In that quiet space, something old and strong began to form. Not just a marriage, but a bridge between two lives, two cultures, two worlds. The next day, the announcement was made. The people gathered in the great court. The king stood proudly beside his daughters. Tom stood between them, wearing new royal robes, white and gold. King Raylan raised his hand. This is not just a union of hearts, he said. This is a message that peace can grow between the unknown, that respect is stronger than fear, that even the smallest meeting can change the future. The people clapped, not with surprise, but with joy. The royal court celebrated for 3 days. Dancers moved through the halls. Food from across the kingdom was served. Songs were sung in both Velmarin and Earth languages during the celebration. Many nobles came to speak with Tom. Some brought gifts, others brought ideas. They asked about Earth's machines, learning methods, and peaceful systems. Tom shared what he could. He spoke with care and honesty, never with pride. Mira and Lyra stayed close to him, not as guardians or rulers, but as true partners. They spoke with him, laughed with him, and guided him in the deeper ways of their world. Together, they made plans for the future, not just for their new life, but for a bond between Earth and Velmara. A peaceful exchange, a shared hope. That night, as the stars shined above the quiet garden, Tom sat between the two sisters. He looked up at the sky that had once felt so strange. Now, it felt like home. The stars above Velmara looked brighter now. The skies felt calm, and the air across the kingdom was filled with a new kind of peace. It had been many days since the royal wedding. Tom was now more than a guest. He was part of Velmara, not just as a husband to the princesses, but as a voice of Earth, a man who had built trust between two distant worlds. Tom woke early each day. His life had changed, but he stayed the same at heart. He still walked through the palace gardens. He still asked questions. He still listened. And now, with Mira and Lyra beside him, he helped guide the future. The royal sisters had different strengths. Mira was sharp and strong with words. She met with leaders, spoke with nobles, and solved court matters with care. Lyra was soft and thoughtful. She helped design learning programs, brought music to the villages, and encouraged people to think with open minds. Tom supported them both in quiet ways, offering new ideas and learning from old traditions. One morning, the three of them sat together in the palace library. They looked over scrolls and screens. The room was quiet, full of soft light. We should open the outer gate, Mira said. Let more travelers visit us, not just humans, but others. Lyra nodded. Yes, but we must prepare our people. Not everyone is ready for so much change. Tom looked at both of them. Then let us take small steps. Peace begins with trust, and trust takes time. Mira smiled. You always find the center of things. That day, the royal council met. Tom stood beside the sisters as they spoke of building a space for learning between Earth and Velmara, a place where young minds could grow, where new ideas could be shared without fear. The council listened. Some agreed quickly, others asked questions, but none said no. The project began. Builders from Velmara and Earth worked together. The learning center was shaped like a circle, with open halls and gardens in the middle. People from both worlds came to visit. Some taught, some studied, all shared. Children from Velmara learned how humans used wind to create power. Young Earth visitors learned how Velmarans grew food without soil. Musicians played new songs. Artists painted stories with colors that changed under light. Tom often sat in the center garden of the learning center. He listened to children laugh and teachers speak. He never tried to lead the place. He simply helped it grow. Back in the palace, life was full of warmth. The people of Velmara accepted him fully. Some called him the Bridge. Others called him the Quiet Star. He never asked for titles, but they were given with love. One evening, as the sun set in soft purple light, King Raylan called Tom to his chamber. The old king looked tired, but his eyes were clear. "You have done more than past trials." The king said, "You have changed hearts." Tom bowed. "I only followed what felt right." "You followed truth," said the king. "That is what our world needed." The king stood and placed a small symbol in Tom's hand. It was shaped like the twin moons and carried the mark of harmony. "This is the seal of unity." The king said, "Few have held it. Fewer still have earned it." Tom looked at the seal and held it with care. He knew it was not for power. It was a sign of deep trust. In the weeks that followed, visitors came from far places. Some had heard of the human who married alien royalty. Others came to see the learning center. A few came with doubts. They left with hope. Earth also began to listen. When news reached the people of Earth about Velmara and the peaceful bonds growing there, many were curious. Some leaders asked to visit. Some young people sent messages asking to join the school. No gates were opened quickly, but the door was no longer locked. One day, Mira, Lyra, and Tom stood together at the top of the palace tower. They looked at the sky, where a small light moved slowly. It was a ship from Earth, coming with peaceful guests. Mira held Tom's hand. "Are you ready to welcome your people?" Tom nodded. "Yes, but I am also ready to welcome yours to Earth someday." Lyra smiled. "Together, we can travel farther than stars." The ship landed with soft light. No weapons, no guards, only scholars, artists, and dreamers, the kind of visitors who build, not break. The meeting was simple. No speeches, no long introductions, just open hands, kind words, and honest smiles. Later, that night, the people of Velmara danced in the gardens. Music from two worlds filled the air. Tom played his old Earth harmonica while a Velmaran flute joined him in song. Mira and Lyra danced slowly, their robes moving like light across water. The stars above seemed to shine brighter, not because they were closer, but because the hearts beneath them had found peace. Tom looked at the sky, then at the people around him. He thought of how it all began, how he had fallen from the sky, lost and unsure. Now, he was found, not because of power, but because of kindness, not because he was perfect, but because he tried. And because of that, a human heart had helped shape a new world, a world of harmony.